Started the program when I was a jovencito, you know, and basically we started this whole thing, just renovating the building, and next thing you know, we took it citywide, and then we took it state, and now national, and now international. It's in 23 countries now.
23 countries, wow. How are you?
Edward Figueroa. Pleasure and an honor to meet you, sir.
Okay. Very good, very good.
You know our story very well.
Yes, yes. I see. Who's that young guy over there?
You were here a few months ago,
yes,
so it's a little familiar to you. And this is, I guess you met our team members already?
Yes.
We just us two. Yes.
Oh, okay. So these are.
So how many young people you got?
Today we have about 7 or 8 that are in class right now, so they actually would love to meet you.
Okay,
Should we
sure.
bring in?
Let's go in.
Come on, in the house.
All right. So what are you guys learning today? What, social studies? Yeah. All right. History? Yeah. History is the center of the universe. What else do you have? What other classes do you have? Math? And so what specialty do you want to sort of like get your hands on and use up? What do you want to learn? What is it you want to learn? Math? What about you? Any particular interest?
Construction field.
All right. How about you guys? How about you? Construction? Right. And you, in the back?
I like to be a
Photographer. Right. You? A writer. You like to write? All right. Well, those are all great fields, okay? And I'm glad that you're here. And we have the funding behind this program, right, which has a strong history, right? Now it's international. Yeah. Okay, so keep it up, all right?
Alex, is there anything you can share with us about what might be happening up in Washington that might benefit young people here?
Well, there are 2 tracks, right, that we're fighting for. Monies, right? We're fighting for money, right, to then bring programs to different parts of the country, including this district, right? So we have the transportation and infrastructure money, right, which is like $1 trillion, right, for different initiatives, right? Like, for example, sewage lines, 5G, 2nd Avenue subway, right down here, right? On 2nd Avenue. Buildings, the tunnels, right? Gateway tunnels, airports, right? Everything that has to do with transportation and infrastructure, we'll get the monies for that. Right? And that's been agreed upon already. Right? In the Senate, both the Republicans and the Democrats agreed on a number for that. Then the second tier is called the human infrastructure bill, which is like other stuff, like training programs, right? So that people could be trained for the jobs that are going to be generated through the transportation infrastructure. You have daycare money, free community colleges, right? Eye care, hearing care for seniors, right? Dental care for seniors, right? Medicare. So that's the human infrastructure, and that's the one that we're having to fight about, right? We haven't agreed upon a number yet. Hopefully we can do that at the end of next week. Once we do that, we can pass both of those bills. And that's the president's agenda. It's called, if anybody knows what the president is saying, Build Back Better, right? That's the Build Back Better program. Transportation infrastructure, already agreed upon. The human infrastructure, we're still fighting over the numbers. It should be about $2 trillion, the human infrastructure. And $1 trillion for infrastructure and transportation for 10 years. That's a lot of money for programs like this one. They'll train you, you'll be able to get a job. Any questions about that? No questions?
Well, here's the question to the young people here, because this is your opportunity to put some influence out here. Hearing all of that, all of those plans about $1 trillion, I know that can be real abstract. I can't even imagine how many zeros are in a trillion. But if you thought if you could think of one thing that would be really impactful for you personally in your life in terms of building your future and taking advantage of this opportunity to influence a decision maker about what you think you really need to make your life successful, to get on a career pathway. Is it in education? Is it work training? Is it something else? Is it childcare? Is it housing? What are the key priorities for you? What comes to your mind?
On my way here, I was on the phone with Senator Schumer talking about housing. The money for housing we're still fighting about, because in this regular housing, right, $120 billion, and then there's public housing, and we want it to be $80 billion, so we can take half of it, 40, for nature. If we can get $40 billion for nature, then we're in good shape. And then we need to work. We had a meeting with all the tenant leaders, the resident leaders yesterday, because then nature has to get their act together, right? If we're going to give them that much money, we've got to make sure they spend it the right way, right? And so it should be projects that will give the housing, the nature housing stock, another 50 years. At the very least, right? So they got to have their act together, and we got to fight for the money.
Well, now, why did you say housing?
See, for me, I'm 32 years old. I'm a single man, and through the trial and tribulations, housing was the biggest, hardest thing that I could accomplish. I could work every day, all day. I could save all the money I could save, but getting into a place for my own is the hardest thing I can do.
Because it takes money, because rent is high, right?
It takes money, it takes references, it takes a lot. But at the end of the day, one of the best parts of being able to share my experiences is understanding where everything falls down to my housing with the government as the umbrella. And
well, there are competing interests, right? Because, for example, who were the people most affected by the pandemic? Who were the ones that really lost disproportionately their job? Women. Women. Because they had to go back home. The kids were at home.
yes.
With the distance learning, they had to leave their jobs, and they had to take care of their kids. Now, for those women to go back to work, what do they need? They need daycare.
Yeah.
They can't do it without daycare. Where are they going to leave their kids? So there's a big fight for universal daycare, like universal daycare. Almost like universal pre-K, universal daycare, right? For everybody. So they are competing interests, right? Seniors, right? They say, well, you know, Medicaid doesn't take care of our dental care, our hearing or our eye care. If we're going to expand that, that's some money that we're going to have to include, right? That's a competing interest, right? So they say, well, you're going to have transportation infrastructure. Where are you going to have the workers trained? Well, free community colleges, right? So we can train them for the Second Avenue subway jobs that are coming when we do that, right? That's a competing interest, because there's a price tag for free community colleges, right? One of my top priorities, probably number one, is housing, NYCHA, the $80 billion for public housing nationally, and we'll push for New York to get half of that.
Yep.
With $40 billion, the NYCHA, there's 70,000 residents that live in NYCHA housing in my district. 1 out of 10 people live in NYCHA housing. So the quality of life there is pretty crappy. And in order for us to lift the quality of life there, we got to invest some money, right? We got to have a good boiler system that won't flood with the next storm. Right? The boilers, right, they were constructed low, right? You guys know about this better than I do. When we had the storm the other day, Ida, right? we had how many inches of rain? Like over 3 inches of rain
7.
within an hour.
7 in a day.
7 in the day, and within an hour, 3 inches of rain. It flooded everything. It got into some of the basements where the boilers are at, and it flooded the boilers. So now you got to lift them. You got to build them up here. So that the next time we get another storm, you know, it won't damage the boilers. Pointing, right? The brickwork. When you get mold inside the buildings and you get a leaky pipe, it's usually because of pointing. It's usually because there's a problem with the bricks on the envelope of the building, right? Or on the roof of the building. Right. Very costly.
Yeah.
But you gotta do that. If you wanna improve the conditions inside the apartment, you can't fix that mold in the corner and think that it's not gonna come back. If you got a problem in the envelope of the building, it's gonna come back.
That's right.
I'm telling you, you're wasting your time, really, unless you do the outer part of the building. That's very costly, right? Elevator work, right?
Yes.
Costly stuff, right? So $40 billion really helps out.
Congressman, when I was a kid, I lived in the Washington Projects when it was brand new.
You were in Washington?
Yeah.
Was that 99th Street, is it?
Yeah, 102nd and 3rd.
102nd, yeah.
Right across from the Eagle Theater, if you remember
Yeah.
that. But in those days, it was brand new. I moved in when the projects were brand new in 1958. And I'm saying, it was a great place to live. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
You know, to me, it was a great childhood. But nowadays, the buildings are dilapidated.
Yes.
So I say, bring it back to that pristine way it was then.
We're gonna need money.
Spend some money, exactly.
We're
And
gonna
we
need
appreciate
money.
your work on that. Can I ask you another question?
Sure.
I know that you're in the appropriations committee.
Yes.
And I know that you're working on the youth bill funding on the inside. And there's a proposal from the Senate and the House and the President to put about $140 million into youth bill for this coming year. I just want to remind you, this is the critical moment now.
This work makes sense because if we're going to invest money in housing, if we're going to invest money in transportation and infrastructure, what better than component for training the youth bill?
That's it.
So you can't have it and not have the workforce ready for what's coming up.
That's it.
You gotta have it. I mean, there's no options to it. Yeah.
And just so you know, we have 4 programs here that are hitting at least 3 of those options. So our construction skills training, we have the building operations training, which talks about the boilers and the building envelopes and training young people to be ready to operate those buildings. And we have a broadband program that we started.
The transportation infrastructure is also cover broadband.
Exactly. This is exciting times in Washington right now.
Yes. I think we'll, I'm confident that we'll get it, we'll get it through the finish line relatively soon, within the next couple of weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. We gotta do it. There's no choice. The question is how much, right? And one bucket is already done. Transportation infrastructure is already done. We're just talking about the second
Human
bucket.
services infrastructure, yes.
Well, we thank you for fighting for us.
Thank you so much. And keep up the faith, all right?